Hello, and welcome to the CivilTalk podcast. I'm your host, Tapasio Althouse. If you're new to the show, this is where we explore civility and social emotional learning with esteemed guests, expert insights, and practical advice to help people navigate the world. Today, we are thrilled to have Al Kasani on the show. Al is a PhD student in material science and the founder of Particle N, a groundbreaking company at the forefront of the precious metal catalyst industry. Particle N's innovations make green energy not only more efficient, but far more affordable, which is crucial in the transition to green hydrogen as a leading energy source for companies like Amazon. His entrepreneurial journey began with the sale of his first patent in 2019, and he has not slowed down since. From partnering with Coleman on solar cooling tents to tackling the iridium shortage, Al's work is paving the way for a more sustainable future. And in today's conversation, we will explore how Al's approach to entrepreneurship is not just about innovation, but about fostering a culture of civility and responsibility within the business world. Al, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure for me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. So to start out, we'd love to hear more about your professional and educational background, as well as how you became acquainted with CivilTalk.
Yeah, I'm a PhD candidate in material science right now, and my first exposure to civil talk was in entrepreneurship competition that we have in the University of Connecticut called IQ,
Mm,
where you pitch your idea, you get feedback, and then the best ideas are gonna get a cash prize. We won the second prize in that. And a part of the mentorship was testing and experiencing your civility in a platform called CivilTalk. So that was my first exposure to that.
Well, congratulations on winning. That's a big deal.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. What was the business?
The business was Particle N at
Okay, so it was
the very basic stage that we were.
mm,
It was quite a journey. We were exposed to a lot of good mentors that helped us to take our business idea to the next level,
mm,
turning it into something that is applicable to the real world.
right.
Yeah.
And within that journey, obviously Particle N is in the foundation, the core of your entrepreneurial journey. But I'd love to hear more about your experience with how, soft skills and one-on-one people skills really played a factor in the making, production, and I guess building of Particle N.
It's a very good question. We actually had a 3 days seminar here at the University of Connecticut. We had guests from Germany, Israel, Mexico, a lot of different countries that came here. And one of the questions that were brought up was that what students need to learn the most in the
Yeah.
school in order to be successful in the industry. And the best answer was from Alex Paparandu from Mott Corporation that said, you professors need to teach students how to do the soft skills, presentation skills, civility, how to control their emotions, how to practice their EI, emotional intelligence, how to present their ideas, and how to interact with their team and lead them.
Mhm.
So I believe that that's the cornerstone of the education that often is being neglected. And Civil Talk can help the education system to cover those gaps that we have between what we are teaching to the student and what the industry needs from them.
Right. And that must be difficult. I one thing I love about Civil Talk and talking about this within certain vocations and entrepreneurial fields is I love pinning Civil Talk and the idea of civility and social emotional learning within specifically the tech industry. it's a very competitive industry, and they often place a premium on results. Um, how do you personally, and then with your team too, balance that sort of drive for success with maintaining that culture of civility, and respect within your team and your partnerships? I'd love to hear more, sort of any stories that you might have or incidences you might have for future entrepreneurs who are specifically in the tech industry. What did you wish you knew when you first started out when it comes to people skills and soft skills and managing that?
uh, I can go back in time when I was a junior in college, and I remember I had this friend, this buddy of mine that could always get the best internships. He always had a wide variety of different offers from different companies, and the best I could get was working in a restaurant. Because and I was wondering what was his secret sauce, that he was just naturally good at it. He could make people like him, trust him, and I wasn't. So it took me a long time to grasp what was the that little secret thoughts that he was having, and I was lacking. And obviously, it was the EI, emotional intelligence, how to control your emotions, how to manage your emotions, and how to manage your effect on other people's emotions. He was naturally good at it. A lot of us are not, and we have to learn them.
Yeah,
And uh, platforms like CivilTalk can help us to work on those soft skills and practice them until we master them.
yeah. We're curious, us listeners and myself are curious, what was that certain je ne sais quoi that your friend had? I think a lot of the times when I look at someone who has good soft skills or is a good business person, listening skills and pausing and really incorporating what your person is trying to say into your dialogue, you know?
Yeah, I would say being able to listen actively,
Right.
being able to show sympathy,
Mhm.
being able to being friendly, being positive, having a positive spin in the emotions that you expose other people to, are were definitely the small differences that was making him successful and me unsuccessful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you seem to be doing great with Particle N. Are there, just to go further into your professional career, is Particle N specifically what you're working with now, or are you doing other things in the tech and entrepreneur world?
So I'm finishing my PhD at UConn, and my goal is to develop this technology and take it to the market.
Mhm.
We have done a great progress, uh, and I think by the year 2028, we're going to be in the market and
Got it.
starting to sell our products. So that's my plan for now and next 4 years.
Amazing. Can you explain to our audience and to me as well exactly what I have a fair layman's understanding, but can you just explain further what what you're all about, Particle N?
Absolutely. So when it comes to the precious metals, the first thing that comes to our mind is that piece of jewelry that we buy for our loved ones on their birthday or on our anniversary. But there's a larger use case for these precious metals in the industry. The gasoline that we put in our cars every day, millions of tons are being used in the world. Precious metals are used in their production. The catalytic converter at the end of our exhaust system in our cars, which is taking most of the pollutions out of our exhaust fumes is made out of precious metals. Green hydrogen industry is significantly relied on precious metals and is inherently required to produce green hydrogen. We have developed a process at Particle N that can reduce that precious metal cost by 90% for all of these industries by increasing its efficiency by 8 times.
Mhm.
When something is 8 times more efficient, it means that you will need to buy 8 times less of that material, which is around 90% saving for all of these potential markets.
Right. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, Particle N is really about sustainability and innovation and making the world a better place and doing it at a lower cost. Uh, how do you ensure that that mission of social responsibility is reflected in company culture? You know, I think a lot of companies don't practice what they preach. Um, how do you make sure that that sort of sustainability and the idea of making the world a better place is also reflected in company culture and the way you interact with your team and, you know, external stakeholders?
I believe that every business should have core values, and our core values are efficiency, sustainability, and community.
Mhm.
There is a major barrier for the green hydrogen industry, which can make the world a much better place, much cleaner place, because when you burn hydrogen, you will only produce water vapor, and water vapor is safe for all the species on this planet.
Yeah.
So the major barrier that this industry is facing is the shortage of many precious metals that are required uh, for its production. And with our technology, we can uh, reduce this barrier. We can make them cheaper. We can make green hydrogen cheaper, more available. We can reduce the capital cost of a green hydrogen plant by 30% with our technology,
Mhm.
which turns into millions of saving for anyone that wants to invest in that area. So we are definitely taking steps to make the world a better place, making it a cleaner place, and making it a more sustainable place.
Yeah. Exciting. And then, you know, with your team too, with that sort of mentality, how many people are on your team?
Right now, we're six.
Six
Mm.
people. You know,
Yes.
it's a small team for CivilTalk too, and it's so interesting when we're talking about civility and social emotional learning and having people skills. It's either a lot harder or a lot easier. You know, there's no in between. I think that for me, you know, I think that for me personally, having a small team is so much easier to show off, or not show off, but to kind of practice your social emotional learning. It's a lot difficult to hide behind certain people, you know, when you kind of have to go around the
Yeah.
room and talk about, okay, now it's your turn to talk about what you've been doing, la la la, and to really, you know, engage. And how do you find working with small teams as opposed to, I'm assuming, I mean, I might be wrong, you've worked with a lot larger teams, um, but how does civility and social emotional learning and your personality play into small teams versus larger teams?
There's a law in the system engineering called Gall's law that
Mhm.
says a complex system may never work unless the simple parts of that system can work. Which means that if you can get a simple task done, which could be working with a group of six doing a specific job, there's no way that you can handle a group of 100. So my goal is to succeed with this team and with what we have. And once we succeed in this simple task that we have, we can have enough confidence of expanding this team to a team of 20, 50, and
Right.
succeed. And another aspect of our business is that most of our production is automated, and it has the minimum labor interaction. It's not
Okay.
that labor intensive. So that's another fact that is contributing to this small team.
Right. So there are workarounds.
Yeah.
You're like, well, my people skills really aren't the best. So we're going to have an amazing
Robots.
robot with
Yes.
amazing, you know what? You see a weak link and you fill it with a strong link, whether it be AI or not. You got to make do with what you can. So
Yeah,
there's
that's
there's
true.
no there's no problem with that.
Yeah.
So when you found your team, how did you guys meet each other? How do you formulate a team based off of, okay, these guys and gals I want to work with? What are those things as an entrepreneur and an innovator and, kind of a scientist,
Yeah.
where you're like, this is a person I want to work with, regardless of how amazing your resume looks?
It took me a while to learn a few soft skills about who's the best hire, who is not, but I learned that it all comes down to the values that you have and the values that your team have, whether they respected or not, and uh, whether they can apply those values and expand them
Hmm.
into your company's culture. So I would say values was the cornerstone in choosing the right team for me.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, sustainability, but just the ability to be able to talk to someone, have a conversation. Is that important in Particle N? And from what, I'm not in the tech world whatsoever, but in your sphere in the tech world, it's like, well, you don't really need good communication skills, but you do need to put on a happy face when you come into work. So what are those values, particularly for your business, and on the larger scale, maybe that you've seen as a pattern in the tech world?
Yeah, I like when I'm hiring someone, I definitely look at their how outgoing they are, how
Mhm.
extrovert they are. I like extroverted people. I'm not necessarily saying that I don't hire introverted people, but for the jobs that I've been looking for, I like people that could uh, have a normal conversation with a person that they just met.
Yeah.
It's a little bit awkward for us, right? But
Yeah.
you just like open up a conversation with someone, uh, and you start a conversation with them, because a lot of the marketing that I did was in conferences, uh, and it was just with people that I never met before. It's like you go there and you see there are a couple industry people there, and they have uh, a lot of good background in your area, but they never met you, so they don't know anything about you. So you just go say hi, start a conversation with them, you get to know them. And
Yeah.
next time that you need something from that particular industry, somebody that can help you with that, and they have already seen you and had a conversation with you, so they know that you exist.
Right.
So when I'm adding somebody to my team, I definitely look for those soft skills, you know, being able to engage with people and make them memorable in their minds,
Yeah.
and building connections, building a community and network.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
I mean, you really have to, you're building a system, you're building a community, and you're building, you need to find, I think the biggest thing as a leader when you're fronting something is knowing which people, what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. And I
yeah,
think I think that's a big skill that kind of goes unnoticed with a lot of people who start companies, is when you do start a company and you are like, okay, I need to give this task to someone else. Maybe it's a skill I don't have. But a big thing I've seen with entrepreneurship is just knowing like, it's really a psychology test, you know, like knowing, parsing out what people's skills are. You know, this person, Ben and Sarah, is really good at doing this, and I'm not really good at doing that. So you're going to do this, you know? Um,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, I had this privilege of being exposed to a lot of smart people while I was doing my PhD. We had this guy, Len Bonville. He was working in UTC. They designed hydrogen and oxygen system for Apollo project that landed humanity on the moon. So he definitely had a lot of experience in working with small teams, big teams, project-based um, systems. And one thing that I learned from him was that when you look at an employee, give them a job and see how do they perform. If they don't perform well, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not good. They might not just be able to deliver that particular task.
mhm.
And give them another task with a different angle and see how they perform. Oftentimes, I practice this. I see like if somebody cannot deliver one job, there's oftentimes 99% of the time another job that they can deliver perfectly.
Right.
So yeah, like you said, people have strengths and weaknesses, like I do. Everyone does, and it's really important that we identify those and we play our cards well.
Yeah. Yeah. How has the, you know, in the tech world, I come from a psychology and literature background. So I feel like I spent a large portion of my education self-reflecting, you know,
Yeah,
and a lot of my essays, you really do have to self-reflect. You're like, huh, is that, do I do that too? In, you know, the tech world, I'd love to hear your insights about self-reflection in the tech world. And is there space for that? Is there space for people to self reflect? And is the onus on the individual? Or do you see any room for that kind of being in the community atmosphere and sort of having it be collaborative in order to help with parsing out, okay, you're good at this, I'm good at this, you know? I mean, it's crucial.
yeah, and I think the scientific community is a little bit behind in that aspect. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
in these conferences, people usually talk about their findings, and then there's not much time for their self-reflection. I think us as humans, we all go through a lot of traumatic experiences that can literally affect our viewpoint of the world, how we see each other, how we perceive the world. So I think that the scientific community, uh, when I say scientific community, I mean like basic science, STEM science. We could have uh, done better in working on those self-reflectionist skills and learning how to engage better. I mean, there are people that are naturally good at uh, these stuff, like these emotional intelligence of understanding how their emotions are and how they're affecting other people. But the majority of us don't have that. So again, I think there's that gap in our educational system that doesn't teach us uh, how to reflect on our emotions. Or I don't know. Did you have any courses that taught you how to work on your emotions before college?
You know, I didn't, and that's a really good question, and that's a huge reason why I work with Civil Talk. Is I wish that there was.
Uh-huh.
I wish there was a course that talked about boundaries, that talked about self-reflection. I mean, a lot of
Right.
these concepts were thrown about in college, but no one really dove deep into what it actually meant, you know, and gave us the vocabulary to really dissect it and integrate it into our lives. It was just, they were just words, you know, and I was
Right.
like, what does that mean? You know,
Mhm.
what do these funny words mean? You know?
Right. Yeah.
And we didn't really engage in like real thoughtful conversation about it. And I think that you really tend to have a vocabulary when you need it. And for me, I didn't really form a vocabulary for these concepts until I was like, I actually really need this in my life to protect myself. And also to, I'm also an entrepreneur as well. If you want to build anything, you have to have a vocabulary for these terms. If not, guaranteed you will not meet a good, you won't have good results.
True.
So yeah, for me in particular, I think that, you know, I didn't have that. And that's one of the reasons why I love Civil Talk. And that's why I love you were a part of the program on Civil Talk too, because you found a need. And I will say you were a big poster on Civil Talk.
Yes, I was, because
You posted a lot.
yeah, because I never had a platform where I could express my emotions. I can go on LinkedIn and post this flashy post. Hey, I achieved this big milestone. I raised like 100K, $2 million.
Wow.
But I use Civil Talk as a platform to express my feeling. You remember that story that I wrote about the Great Depression?
No, you're gonna have to remind us.
Yeah, the difference between facts and stories, the Great Depression, like the stock market crashes and people, uh, the Great Depression happens, right? This is a fact. But the story of the people's experience, the emotions that people went through, is a story that oftentimes doesn't come out of the data that we have from that era, right?
Mhm.
Because we typically don't document emotions. All we document is facts, numbers,
Mhm.
and we often minimize this into a couple of numbers, but I believe it's more than that. All those experiences that people had, all that emotional burden, those all existed, and we, as a society, are often neglecting that part.
That's a really good point. I really like that. Yeah, it's easy to be bogged down with facts when you're telling a story and not inputting the idea of what these people actually were going through emotionally. Um, yeah, that's a good point. And it's interesting that you say that you have a platform to express emotions. You can't really post on Civil Talk without expressing an emotion, which is kind of cool. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, Facebook has the same thing where I think you can do an emotion, but you can still post. On Civil Talk, you have to tag an emotion or else you can't post, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and it seems a little intense, but at the same time, it's like, no, you really do have to interact with your emotions. And it is a quote unquote class or a time frame in which you really have to engage with your emotion or you can not even be a part of the community, technically speaking.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah. And it incorporates the wide spectrum, the wheel of emotion, which Pandora's box is very, very large. So all the emotions are on Civil Talk, which is great if you're not acquainted or have a vocabulary for what every emotion is, because there's a lot.
Yeah, honestly, I had to look up some of those phrases to see what
Hmm.
do they mean.
Yeah.
Because again, it all goes back to us not being educated on our emotions.
Right.
And what value do they have? Because at the end, we're all emotional beings. Like the majority of the decisions that we make are based on our emotions, and yet they're not studied. We believe that we always talk in numbers. Like we want to buy this house. Like we always like, yeah, okay, this is the land price, and this is like how much the building cost, and like all of that. But at the end, like there's often times that we choose the house that we like more rather than the house that is better for our budget, right?
Right. No, you're
Because
you're right.
that happened to me. I mean, I don't know what your experience is about that, but
Yeah.
I believe it all comes down to our emotions, what we like, what we don't like. So
Right.
well,
Yeah.
why aren't we learning about it?
Yeah, I always tell my coworkers and friends, it's just that je ne sais quoi. Even with a partner, you're like, oh my God, you're so not right for me. But like,
right?
but like,
You're
I don't know,
toxic.
but you're
I
toxic.
see
But
the red flags in
yeah,
you.
yeah, but like, there's just, I don't know, and that's why that happens so often in your 20s too, because you
Yeah,
don't have the vocabulary,
right.
and then you're just like, oh, I just got emotionally slapped in the face and now I have to really educate myself, or I have to repeat this pattern and be doomed for life. And we don't want that. You know,
Hmm.
you learn from your mistakes, or you learn before. It's sort of like, it reminds me of sustainability and things that you're doing. Sustainability is all about circumventing some sort of catastrophic destruction, and it's the same thing with education. Education is just sustainability of your mind in a way. You're really trying to avoid and circumvent a lot of sorrow and heartbreak, which are not bad things, but the more you know, the more you grow, and the more you can sort of avoid, you know, certain pitfalls. And who would not want to do that? Who
Yeah,
would?
yeah. Speaking of dating in 20s, have you noticed that people with good soft skills, with good emotional intelligence, are really good at dating? Like
Oh
they,
yeah.
they can they can literally uh swipe out all the people with red flags and choose the best
Mhm.
partner. Like these people can usually do well in the business, right? Like if you can make good business decisions based on the more opportunities that you make for yourself, you have more choices. And if you have the ability to choose the best either business partner or life partner for yourself, you're going to be successful. You're going to be happier on average, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like those two skills go hand in hand. Picking a life partner and picking business partners are not too off or far off from each other as far as skill sets go. You know, what does this person have that I don't have? What
Yeah,
it's the same thing in life partners, business partners, and it's a skill set that really just crosses over in so many regards. And I mean, that's the challenge. It's the
yeah. It's not easy.
it's not easy, but nothing worth having ever is easy, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah. But it
um,
takes effort to learn it. And I think that the the more failures you have early on, the better
mhm.
you're gonna get later on.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking about too. I think a lot of people who I look up to, my mentors, or who have quote unquote succeeded, have really they either they know how to adapt, or they learn really fast, and they go through all of and they learn from their surroundings fast too. And
Yeah.
picking up on those quote unquote red flags, noticing how people make mistakes around you. If you are someone who wants to accomplish something, is a surefire way to really succeed and obtain those emotional intelligence skills. And sometimes they just creep in and you don't even know you have them too, which is wild for some people. And maybe it's a little bit of maturity too, but um, I think that's a huge factor. But Al Kasani, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. We're going a little over time, so I want to look out for that. But I'd love to just kind of hear some final thoughts. Anything you'd like to say for people in the tech industry or future entrepreneurs before we close out for today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been a pleasure to be a part of CivilTalk podcast and app. My final words would be it's a practice for all of us to learn how to do better with our emotional intelligence, with our uh, core values. And once we define our core values, it's going to be much easier for us to absorb people with the same values. And building the right team again comes down to choosing the right partners, and right partners again comes down to uh, similar values. So yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, good luck with the rest of the podcast.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we've had a lot of interesting episodes that I was listening to. So
I know
yeah,
it's
good
getting
luck with that.
good. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And you being one of them, I really appreciate you being here. I think, you're our first PhD student. We've had a lot of people who are really far out in their university PhD studies. So it's really nice to have someone who's kind of in the thick of it right now and, is still very young. So it's great. And we want to have more diverse people on our show who can sort of be a spokesperson for that. Everyone's voice is important. And, the great thing about emotional intelligence and civility is it's everywhere. There are no barriers. Everyone has to deal and grapple with these topics at one point or another. So again, thank you so much, Al Kasani, for being on the show and for sharing your EI and civility world with us and for teaching us all about particle N. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit from these discussions. Follow us on social media to stay updated on upcoming episodes like this one and more ways to cultivate civility and emotional intelligence in both your personal and professional lives. Until next time, keep striving for civility and empathy in all that you do. Thank you so much.